as we know the history of Minneapolis. It's been going on for about a year now, right? Initially, the city of Minneapolis passed an ordinance. It was initially vetoed by Mayor Frey, and then City Council came back again, this time with the override votes that they collected over the past local elections, and they passed an ordinance that was supposed to pay drivers $1.40 a mile and 51 cents a minute. Although there was a study that Uber and Lyft really liked, which whoever ordered that study is out of their mind. They did the study for 2022, basically the top earning year for all rideshare drivers around the country coming out of the pandemic. I don't know who authorized that, but it wasn't Uber and Lyft, that I know. So that study came out with rates as 89 cents a mile and 49 cents a minute would be minimum wage or equal minimum wage after expenses in Minneapolis. So there is a huge gap here, right? Then Uber and Lyft go, okay, we're leaving. Okay, don't let the door hit you on the way out, was my initial reaction. And then things got complicated. So Mayor Frey vetoed the city ordinance, and then he got overridden by the city council. So now they got a respite for 2 months. They were supposed to leave April 1st, and then now it got extended to June 1st. And now let the games begin. I'm saying they're not going to leave. They're
All right. So
bluffing.
come
They
June
did this
1st, you're saying
before.
that Uber and Lyft are not going to leave Minneapolis.
Nope, they're not.
All right. Well, I say that they are going to leave. And, I think the reason why is that, the big thing that Uber and Lyft care about in all these battles are cities and states and regulators. They want independent contractor status enshrined in the legislation. And in Minneapolis, they're not getting that. So I think it shouldn't be. It's kind of like obvious to me that Uber and Lyft are pretty pissed here. They're like giving up a bunch of things, higher pay, whatever. If, in other cases, they've given up deactivation and, sort of, deactivate third party deactivation and sick pay and things like that, right? All of these things are on the table and they're not really getting anything out of it. We know that they don't always want to pay or never want to pay drivers more. So I guess like to me, it's like a line in the sand, like, hey, Minneapolis is a pretty small market. So, they probably don't want this to be a trend for other states. So they're going to put their foot down like, hey, if we're going to say no to one market and, threaten or actually leave, Minneapolis is the one to do it so that it doesn't happen, somewhere like Illinois or California
Yeah.
or some other state.
Well, that part I kind of agree with you, just because they want that, just like they did in Seattle, Washington State, right? They got that. They got that from the drivers that they're going to stay independent contractors. Okay, I get that part. However, Uber and Lyft, negotiating minimum wage. First of all, the rideshare is not a minimum wage job. Whoever says that, they're fooling themselves. I mean, 89 cents a mile, 49 cents a minute is probably higher than what the drivers were getting paid in Minneapolis with upfront fares. That's pretty obvious because it was after expenses. But I think this talk needs to be just eradicated from the rideshare vocabulary. Minimum wage. Rideshare is not a minimum wage job. It's just risky.
Well, I
We're
mean,
putting
what industry do they have, guaranteed earnings, I guess you would say? I mean, the whole point is minimum wage, right? You're sort of saying that they should have, I don't know, 50% more than minimum wage, and that should be
Absolutely. There is
what's in the
risk
law.
premium. Risk premium. I think I put it as anything. Risk reward, risk premium, right? I mean, look, is $1.40 and 51 reasonable? Are passenger rates going to triple like Uber says, Lyft say? Uh, Probably. I mean, did the rates go up in Seattle? Yes, they did. Did the rideshare completely die or get nullified from the face of the earth? No. However, look, I'm thinking for all stakeholders. I get it, right? There's riders, there's Uber and Lyft, and there's the drivers. Still, Harry, until today, without drivers, there's no rideshare.
Yeah,
I'm
I
not
think
sure.
any discussion though of higher pay or minimum wage, right? Anytime you're going to be giving drivers more, I think that has to be in tandem with a cap on the number of drivers, right? I think this is like the other big issue, right? That anytime you raise prices for drivers, hey, sure, yeah, that's a good thing. Let's pay them more. If we triple what they're paying, obviously a lot of people who are existing drivers are probably going to drive more because they can make more. And then other people who are not driving are going to want to sign up, right? Maybe people who quit in the past or who are no longer active are going to come back, right? And so anything that raises the pay without some balance on the supply, is going to mean that, hey, they're going to raise pay. And then there's not going to be, if customers take less rides or more people sign up, which probably both will happen to drive, then there's going to be less rides per hour or less utilization for all the drivers, right?
That's why I'm thinking, they're not going to leave because first of all, when you said, Minneapolis is not a massive market. Yes, I agree. It's not like a Chicago, let's say. It's not an LA, obviously. However, they did plenty of trips in 2022. They did 18 million trips in Minneapolis and about 20 million altogether, in Minnesota. So
Doesn't Uber do
Minneapolis
8 million
basically,
trips a day?
no, no, 18 million trips that year in
No, I'm saying,
2022.
but the whole company does 8 million trips a day, right? Or 8 to 10 million trips a day. So, I mean, I
Yeah.
think Minneapolis, I mean, yeah, sure, they do 18 million trips, but I mean, on a percentage basis, I'm guessing it's less than 1% of global, maybe even US, maybe 1 to 2% of US trips.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Uber does 1.1 million trips per hour, 24/7, 365. So yeah, in that sense, it's not a massive market. But one thing that I need to put my foot down on is that, when Uber and Lyft, when the study came out, and Uber and Lyft immediately agreed, yeah, we give them 89 cents and 49 cents. I'm like, no, we need a risk premium. Just like Uber has a take rate, Lyft has a take rate. We have to have a take rate. We cannot work for
I don't know.
minimum wage.
I don't like the idea of government getting involved in setting, I don't know. To me, it's like I feel like a lot of drivers are not fans of government. They're not fans of unions. They're not fans of, this sort of control. They like being their own boss, but then all of a sudden when it comes to, minimum wage or pay, it's like, oh no, give me minimum wage. Oh, give me more, right? Like I think it's kind of you want the best of both worlds. Like seems a little hypocritical to me.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not a huge fan of the government either,
That's
but
what every driver says. Every driver says, I'm not a fan of the government, but if
but
I can
left
get
alone,
a
left
minimum wage
alone,
just for me,
I know, but left alone, right? These companies are out of control. The pendulum has swung too far the other way. I mean, the way I look at this is like a brake check. You just, tailgating somebody, they brake check you. This is the brake check. Okay. This is the brake check moment. And then, I mean, look, there's more legislation coming. There's legislation coming in Boston. There's legislation coming in Chicago. There's legislation coming in Portland. City by city, state by state, these drivers are banding together and doing their best they can to do the brake check. And I don't blame anybody but the Uber and Lyft to bring themselves to this situation. I mean, you got to pay these people a reasonable number. You cannot, I mean, and I'm not telling you that 140 and 51 is reasonable. But on the
I
other
mean, I guess
hand,
that's my point though. Who decides what's reasonable, right? Because,
well, they did the
obviously,
study. They did the study,
who's
right?
they?
Well, the state did the study. State of Minnesota ordered the study. They have a study that says clearly 89 cents a mile, 49 cents a minute equals minimum wage in Minneapolis, which is $15.70
After
after expenses.
expenses.
That's what they said. So now Uber
Right,
says,
but
yeah,
they're
we'll give him
asking
that.
for $1.40 and 51 cents, right?
Well, $1.50 was the city council ordinance that they passed, which is 50% higher than what the study said.
Right.
However, I think okay, the reason I'm saying they're not going to leave because is I think there is going to be a middle ground found between the driver groups. And look, if Uber and Lyft lead, I mean, I said that initially, then I started thinking about it, right? I go like, don't let the door hit you on the way out. I'm like, who's going to come in and do the job, right? And, and and I think there's going to be a middle ground. I think
Yeah.
cooler heads are going to prevail, and they're going to stay. And because drivers are going to go hungry, riders are going to go
Well,
without
I think
without.
that's a good point. I mean, so this all happened 6, 7 years ago in Austin. I mean, I remember we
Yeah,
went on the ground to Austin, Texas, and met with the 6 or 7 companies that came in to replace Uber and Lyft. And, it was pretty messed up how Uber and Lyft basically just, one week they said they were going to leave and then they were gone. And then drivers were kind of left, it was a much worse experience for drivers. It was much harder to get a ride. They were organizing rides on Facebook groups and, a lot less security, a lot less, payment, I mean, there's a reason why the platforms exist, right? It was kind of like total chaos. And eventually Uber and Lyft came back in. But there was this big period in between where honestly, I would say that like drivers kind of, if a rider can't go out on the bar, to the bars on the weekend, whatever. But if a driver, isn't making money, I mean, I think that's the biggest issue.
yeah. I no, that part I agree. I'm trying to be really neutral on this subject, really, that then look for all stakeholders, right? And I am definitely you know, not in the group of let the door hit you on the way out any longer. I'm allowed to change my mind, and but I think what is fair is the question, right? And what other things are in this package? And I am I am not convinced yet. But if you ask me today if they're going to leave, I'm saying no. That's why I'm saying no. I am. definitely somewhere in between that $1.41 and 50 or 49, $1.51 and 49 cent number and the state number. It has to be higher than that, but I think it's going to be lower than that. And then some sort of
Well, I guess
conclusion is
that's a good
going
question for the audience. What is a fair per mile and per minute
to,
rate? And honestly, do you trust the government to set that number? Because I don't know. I think it would be quite a bit of work for someone like you and I, two experts, to figure out this number. I'm not exactly, I don't have a lot of confidence in the regulators in Minnesota or any of these states to figure out that number. So I don't know. That kind of scares me. To me, I like the idea more of like a floor, a minimum wage, sort of a, smaller number, right? Like if there could be some big repercussions if you start doing $1.40 per mile and 51 cents per minute with no cap on drivers, and then they pay you get more, but you get now one ride every 2 hours, right? So I think there's a lot
well,
of second order effects that
that
aren't
goes to
being
my
considered.
quality over quantity, though, right? I mean, the old days, like, I mean, actually, if you look at it, Harry, $1.40 a mile, I mean, $1.51 a mile or $1.41 a mile and 49 cents a minute is pretty much what I was getting paid in LA, in
Yeah.
2016. I mean,
All right.
it's really not like asking for the world. I get it. Scale is different. Business is different. Everything is different. But yeah, I mean, look, I understand economics. I agree with you actually on one part that if they put that rate out there, right, and people are going to come out of the woodworks and drive more, and then yeah, utilization rates are going to go down. But at least the wear and tear on the driver's car is going to be less. Yeah, I'd rather do one trip and get paid 30 bucks, for the hour than
Yeah.
do six trips and get paid 30 bucks for the hour. And the floor that you're talking about, just like we have in Prop 22 in California, right? I'm telling you, I drive quite a bit, and every trip I get is right at that floor now. The algorithms are wonderfully lowering that, hitting that floor. And I'm hearing from New York drivers too now. They have a floor in New York, 26 per active hour. Sure enough, the algorithm is lowering everything to that level. So I don't want to mess with that either because I don't think Prop 22 or clones of Prop 22 is going to be the answer in
All right.
Minneapolis. I am betting that cooler heads are going to prevail. There's going to be a somewhere in between, maybe buck
All right.
20 and 45-ish, somewhere in that range. And then they're going to settle and they're going to be going on with their lives because I don't want anybody to lose. I mean, I do know there are a couple of companies they're trying to
Well,
go
we'll
in
see.
there,
Let's
right?
we'll let people leave a comment down below if they want to make a prediction. Will Uber and Lyft leave Minneapolis? But we'll know pretty soon here.